So, hello, and first and foremost, I would like to express how thrilled I am to be speaking with you and to be interviewing you on behalf of MLWZ, so Mały Leksykon Wielkich Zespołów, about the newest upcoming Imaginaerium album called The Siege. Laura, Clive, thank you very much for your willingness to dive into this fantastic work of yours. And for the record, I am obviously speaking, and I have the great pleasure to talk to Laura Piazzai and Clive Nolan from Imaginaerium, a truly extraordinary, epic, lyrical, and poetic artistic project which captivates the listener with its inter alia, inventive musical arrangements, reconciling many music genres, for instance, folk, opera, musical, progressive rock, and all of that in the context of bringing back momentous historical events and ideas in the concepts of project's works. It is also impossible not to mention the powerful and captivating voice of Laura, whose incredible vocal skills and interpretations of the lyrics make the Imaginarium truly unique. Thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss the latest work of yours with you.
Thank you for having us.
And before we can focus on the latest fantastic creation, I would like to ask you both about the name of the project, as I believe it perfectly captures the idea standing behind it. So have you perhaps called the project Imaginarium because the music offers has such a powerful effect on the imagination of the listener, or was there a different idea standing behind it?
Well, the initial, let's say that Imaginarium was invented by Anne Claire Rallo, the wife of the late Eric Bouillet, and we then discussed that this was actually a great name because, well, of course, of his historical sound. It sounds very good, and the listener literally imagines himself to be part of the album or of the albums, because it's like being a side actor of our albums. So when you close your eyes and just sit there and listen to our albums, you can actually feel being part of it, you know. So this happened with the Medici, and it will happen now with the Siege, as Siege happens to all of us daily, we would say. That's the secret behind the name.
And Clive?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, I think Eric's idea was that the anything is possible angle, and Imaginarium suggests that it's whatever you come up with in any way you want to come up with it. And I think that's what kind of made me interested in the first place, because although when you asked me to be involved, we were talking about the Medici project, it seemed to me that maybe you could explore anything. And that seems to me to be why the name suited the project.
Since we are talking about the history behind the project, was there a specific moment that inspired you? And how did you two meet? And how did Imaginarium come to life initially?
Well, that's a big question. Well, it's a small question, but it's a big answer. It all began when I was forced to sit in a chair for 6 months because of an eye operation, or a series of eye operations. And then Laura happened to choose that period of time to contact me and sort of say, hey, I'm a singer, and, you know, would you be interested in doing anything, usual sort of thing. And under normal circumstances, I probably wouldn't have necessarily followed down that path because I'm reasonably busy, but you know, I wasn't. So we got talking, and she sent me some stuff, and then of course we decided to make an album, which we did, which is called From the Outside In, which was a retrospective of music I'd written over the previous years, and she reinterpreted them. And then later down the road, she got involved with Eric with this project, and then I came on board. So Laura can give you the genesis of that.
Yes, we were literally talking each and every day, Eric and I. And what he told me was this: I want you to have your own epic project because your voice is so epic that I really want your voice to shine in something. And we thought about history, as we both are history lovers, and now also obviously Clive. So I said, okay, the two of us, I can give you the voice, you can give me the inspiration of the music and everything. Who will write the lyrics? And I said, the lyrics, there's only one person that could do it. And I said, let me write to Clive and see if he is on board. And he said, in the beginning, well, I don't know. I said, okay, listen, just think about it. And if you then decide that you want to be in it, we give you some hints and you try to see if you're interested in the topic. And well, he was, and in 24 hours, no, not even, he came up with a storyboard, literally the storyboard of the whole album. And after a while he started to write obviously the music also. So it was like some demos from Eric that passed over to Clive, and he started to get very involved and interested in it. So he wrote lyrics, he wrote a lot of music, and we had a beautiful album in the end, and that's how Imaginaerium came together.
And yeah, because I thought Clive was going
to be fair, when Eric passed away, I assumed that was going to be the end of the Imaginaerium project, because it seemed a bit sort of pointless carrying on, since he was the person who created the project in the first place, or came up with the idea, and then you know, and sort of put me on a particular path, because it was he gave me 6 pieces of material at the very beginning and said, it's kind of what we're looking for. And then I picked up and ran with those, and I think I used 5 of those pieces of material and then just wrote the rest of the album. And but the thing is, it started with that nucleus, that idea from Eric. So it seemed like if what was going to make Imaginaerium exist if he wasn't there. And when we started working on what has become the Siege album, that was a year ago, just over a year ago. We were going to make a follow-up to From the Outside In. So in other words, I was going to choose a set. Well, we chose a set of old Nolan songs, and we were going to rework them, and Laura was going to reinterpret them. And we started down that path, and you know, we'd already booked her recording session to come over here for like 2 weeks. And then I had agreed that I'd do 1 new song for the album, just to have something different on that album. And I had a dream, actually, and basically I was playing the piano and there was a cellist and Laura was singing this song, and I woke up, I thought, that's what I've got to do: cello, piano, voice. So I wrote All There Is to See, and that set me on a path of thinking with this whole siege mentality thing, you know, one person locked away, the recluse, living in their own house, looking at the rest of the world as if it was alien to them. And so that kind of got me in a way of thinking, and I decided to write another piece for this All There Is, this album. And then well, it was actually Magda who said to me, you know, what you're doing here is writing an Imaginaerium album. And I said, no, I'm not, I'm just adding a couple of tracks to. So I kept writing, and gradually the balance, you know, every time I wrote a song, and one of the songs from my kind of old material had to be dropped off the album. But for a while, we were still trying to make the follow-up to From the Outside In. And then we got to about halfway and the whole thing just started to tip. And I thought, actually, she's right. This is an Imaginaerium album. And as I've explained in previous times, basically, I kind of found the hat. I found the right hat to put on to be able to write Imaginaerium, like I have for Song of the Wildlands, or for Arena, or for the musicals. I kind of know where I have to be. I've found the space that I need to find to write for Imaginaerium, and for it to be Imaginaerium as opposed to something else that I work on. So now that I've found the hat, you know, I was quite comfortable with the idea that Imaginaerium could continue and Eric's legacy could continue.
In that case, I would also like to take a closer look at the general principles of the project in the context of the previous creation. So the rise of Medici, mentioned earlier, concerns some of the major episodes in the life of Cosimo and Cottesina de' Medici, so the powerful Renaissance family. And Renaissance as an era focused on the anthropocentrism, so on the human, his uniqueness in the grand cosmic scheme of things. So does the humanistic idea of perception of the world guide the whole Imaginaerium approach in the message it conveys, in a way?
Yeah, well, sort of, but we've talked about this in the past, I believe. See, the Medici album was a concept album. In other words, it was a narrative from which I hung songs, and it tells a story. Siege is a conceptual album. We have the basic idea of being under siege, whether it's from health or historical or whatever, or paranoia. It's that idea, and that idea threads its way through the whole album. And we've, instead of telling a narrative, we've hung songs on the idea, and we put them across from different perspectives. So you have obviously Boudicca, or you have the final readout, or you go a completely different way. You have something like Deep, where you just want to sink into the earth and disappear, or All There Is to See, where you lock yourself in a room and look at the rest of the world. It's many different ways of seeing the same basic thing, because we're all under siege in some way, whether it's social media or whatever it happens to be, that everything buzzing around us all the time. So that's really where it comes from.
Thank you. So yeah, the title of the latest album, The Siege, it indicates also the battleistic themes it covers. So the epic first song of the album, Cry Boudicca, refers to the Queen of Iceni, who through her revenge for the cruel injustice she suffered, immortalized herself as a solitary symbol of resistance against the whole Roman battle machine. So does the song imply that in the span and in the lapse of time, you can preserve your identity and go down in history solely through making a stand against the world desperately trying to dominate and subjugate you? Or do you think that Boudicca's heroic stance still has a figurative meaning in today's world?
Well, I mean, it echoes now. I mean, in London, you have a massive statue dedicated to Boudicca and her two children. I mean, that's the thing. These people do represent something. I mean, who she really was, we'll probably never know. In terms of any detail, but she represented the spirit of rebellion. In fact, when Laura delivers that song, I think you can sort of sense that in the vocals. I think you kind of enjoyed being rebellious, didn't you, Laura?
I did, because that song, more than any other, required a deep interpretation of each and every word, literally. And you like when I sang for Contessina, so I had to deliver the words of Contessina, the same thing I wanted to do with Boudicca. So her feelings, her anger, her being what she was, in my opinion, the idea I had, I hope that reaches the ears of the listener when they listen to that song.
Yeah, I was going to make a personal observation that the portrayal of Boudicca was fantastically crafted. And how did you manage to channel those emotions? Was it a challenge or did it come naturally?
It was very natural. It was very natural, because when I go into a song, it's all about liking the song. When I like the song, and when I, which always happens when Clive comes up with a song for me, and I literally went into it, and it's a bit like acting. I put together acting, and even the body is part of it. Even when I sing in the studio, I move myself, I do the moves, I feel completely inside. So if I sing Viking, I'm a Viking. If I sing a Roman, I'm a Roman. I go into whatever I have to go into, and that's the passion probably that comes out completely. I really, I go into it, and when I finish the song, I'm sad about it, because I so much love it that I would like to go on and on and on, giving my rendition to it.
And I would also like to ask you about the second and the third track jointly, because I have spotted a link between them. So the final redoubt sets a scene of the last resort. So the walls are closing in, and the enemies are just around the corner to conquer you, while in Footprints, the lyrical ego closes oneself off to the world and waits to be besieged. and it creates a safe, hermetic haven and doesn't allow people, thoughts, or other ideas to go in. So, does it mean that the only way to achieve peace and self-expression in a world that is constantly trying to besieging you, that is imposing its will, is to fortify and to shut yourself off from the universe?
Well, it's definitely one of the solutions. I mean, you're right. There is a kind of a connection. We've sort of approached it from different angles, as I've said. I mean, some of the elements of Siege are you are what you end up being, if you like. Boudica's a good example of that. She was a victim that was not going to be a victim, but life forced her down a particular trail. With songs like Ridouts and Footprints, you're right that what we're really doing is setting up the battlements, and therefore we're fortifying and being ready to fight. Whereas a more passive approach would be the kind of deep, for example, where you just wish to sink into the ground and just pretty much become invisible. You're sort of not such a victim, but just it's a different way. You're kind of just trying to blend into nothing. So there's a different sort of approach to disappear. I mean, different sort of approaches to how you deal with being under siege. And but you're right that Ridout and interestingly, Final Ridout, my starting point for that song, that lyric, the Final Ridout, was from the film Zulu. I don't know if you've ever seen that film.
I believe I haven't.
No, it's a big epic movie made in the 60s with some very famous actors. It was Michael Caine's first big role. Anyway, it's a true story about a small group of Welsh infantrymen who have to hold Rorke's Drift, which is this tiny, tiny little settlement. And there's like, I don't quite remember, there's like 100 of them, and there's like 5,000 Zulus, and they hold it. And basically, that was the most number of Victoria Cross, which is our highest medal. That was the most number of Victoria Crosses ever awarded for one action. I think there was 13 awarded. Total heroism. It's an amazing story. It's it's an adventure. It's a Victorian adventure, really, I suppose. But in the film, Chard, the guy who finds himself in charge, he's been injured and he's sort of back out there ready to fight again. They're holding off everything. And he says, right, put the bags there. We're going to hold the final Ridout is going right there. And that basically meant that's our last stand. When we all have to retreat, we're going to stand right there in 3 rows. And they do this thing where the front row fire, they go down. The next row fire, they go down while they reload. Third one, and they go back and back and back until there's this absolute pile of bodies in front of them, and the camera pans out as the last bullet ricochets into the mountains, and you have the sort of the gun smoke, and that's your poster. And it was just, I mean, I love the film, but we always remember the final Ridout. They were not going to give up. They were not going to surrender or run away. They were going to make that last stand, and that's what that's about. Like our promo video where Laura and I made our last stand.
Yeah, I also have a question about the video in the next section, let's say. And speaking of Zulus, the art on the page where the lyrics of the final Redoubt are written shows the British soldier and the Zulu warrior.
Yeah. He picked up on what I was, because I told him a little bit behind my thoughts on each song, so he was able to kind of develop the idea. Yeah, absolutely.
So in connection to this and to Boudica's impact on history, what determines that some fighters go down in history and are able to survive in people's minds for hundreds and thousands of years, while some perish forgotten or nearly forgotten in the history forever ousted by the stronger ones? Because I believe that perhaps the song has the connection to the war, Anglo-Zulu War, which was fought in present-day Africa in 1879 between the forces of the British Empire and Zulu warriors. And eventually, as the result of the war, the Zulu lands were divided and the kingdom was effectively dismantled, leading to infernal strife and increasing British control over the region. So in case of all of this, what do you think?
Well, I mean, on the bigger scale of things like that, there's usually a big old load of injustice and crime and corruption and God knows what. So, you know, the thing is, there is a tendency, I think, today to do precisely that, where, you know, I was reading, or actually it was on the news today, you know, Stephen Hawking, right? One of our greatest scientists of all time. There was an article that said that he was living off the back of slavery. And I thought, what? And I looked in it, and basically it was some of the facilities that he had at university were a result of hundreds of years earlier, people putting money into the university who owned slaves. I mean, come on, let's get a bit of balance with these things. Of course, there will always be, but we can't blame people today for crimes that were committed like hundreds and hundreds of
years ago.
I get the idea that in the span of a lifetime, you may well be justified to hold that grudge, or to hold people to account as a country or as a people. But after that, let's, you know, just fucking grow up. Basically, it's just ridiculous. And, you know, as far as I'm concerned, you're absolutely right. Everything that surrounded there was a lot of things wrong. I'm talking about one song and one idea, which is basically a group of people who had to survive against immense odds. That's what captured the public's attention, and that's why they are being remembered. Whereas you're quite right, a lot of the other history is kind of lost in all the kind of everything else. And that applies to Boudica. You're absolutely right again. There would have been many warriors of the time that would have fought against the Romans and attempted to, well, I can name some of them actually, but the thing is, Boudica, she captured people's imagination because, well, firstly, she was a woman leading a tribe. That was pretty rare for starters at that time. So she was a woman leading the tribe. She did not know the word for defeat, as in she was never going to give up. And of course, the other thing that makes that story great and keeps her in our public consciousness is the fact that she was never caught. They don't know what happened. Oh, she poisoned herself. Oh, she died of her injuries. But nobody actually knows. Her body's never been discovered. Nobody knows. She could have changed her appearance and gone off and lived the rest of her life somewhere. There's a magic and a mystery to that. It's a little bit like the same principle as Jack the Ripper. The reason we keep talking about Jack the Ripper is we don't really know who he was. Whereas all those other famous serial killers, well, they've got their little place in history, but they don't have that mystery because we know who they are. And that applies to lots of things. But so that's one of the things that's going to give you immortality, is that element of legend, you know, that thing that makes you myth and legend and all the rest of it. As you know, it's those it's the exceptional moments like Rorke's Drift, where you have something that goes above and beyond. Of course, our history is messy. I mean, we you know, I'm British. I mean, we had an empire, and there would be nothing good about much of that. But that, you know, I didn't do that, so I'm not going to feel bad about it, frankly. You know, we have to kind of move forward, learn the lessons by all means, but, you know, don't keep blaming people about it. That would be my feeling anyway. Probably going to get into trouble saying all that, but never mind.
And Laura, do you think that if ultimate fate of Boudica was known, she wouldn't be such a legendary hero?
Definitely yes, because she lived, her idea lives between legend and mystery, and this is what appeal to us, I think, the fact that we actually don't know what happened to a person, if she even existed. Who knows? Perhaps that's all the legend. We
definitely existed because she's in a lot of Roman writings and reports for battles.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
The thing is,
we don't know anything about, for example, they're talking about if she had any other people, like they were talking about a sister, but they don't know the name of the sister. They don't know anything about her, you know. So apart from the fact that she was the queen of the Iceni, that's the only thing. And
she was married to the king of the tribe. We know about him.
Yeah.
He had two daughters, and we know their names.
We know these things that everybody knows, but I know she wasn't that clear. Even I bought this when I came to the UK at the airport. I bought this incredible book. It's really, really fun even. And when they spoke about Boudica, because it's Boudica, and that's the reason why I bought it, but it's just like 3 pages actually, where they mention her, and with the usual things we know about her. So all this mystery around her, I think, like Clive says, everybody, when you have this a lot of mystery around you, that's what makes you interesting to the people, I suppose, and because you can use the imagination.
Yeah, I mean if you think about another song, we got one called "Never Burn the Cakes," which is this sort of the acousticy one, is slightly more comedic, but the principles of it are the same. I mean, King Alfred is one of our great kings in history. He really went a long way to unifying all the various segments of the country. He didn't quite actually become the first king of England, although I think he's often been described as that. But of course, he'd lost a battle, and he basically was lying in the marshes somewhere, hiding from the Vikings, licking his wounds. And then you have this famous little anecdote about the fact that he was left to make sure the bread didn't burn, probably, and we call it cakes, but and he was lost in thought, burn. And that's the little anecdote that we associate with King Alfred when you're a school kid. Oh yeah, Alfred, he burnt the cakes. King Canute, he was the guy on the the shore that couldn't stop the tide. Now, he wasn't trying to stop the tide. He was demonstrating to his courtiers that he couldn't stop the tide, that he wasn't a god. But these things get like sort of focused on and certain things. But each one of those almost is like an identifying badge for these people, which is why they've probably lasted that much better than perhaps some of the other leaders and who are out there and have done whatever they've done. You got to have a good sales point.
Yeah, so speaking about this goofy dimension, let's say, does it mean that despite all the achievements snatched from the clutches of fate and efforts to maintain your identity in the world that is trying to consume everything, one can still be remembered, at least partially, because of some random absurd slip-up that somehow stands out from any other victories? So why does the universe's folly creep in?
That was what that song's about. I mean, that was Laura was because when I was recording with her, every now and again, just a good way of getting rid of her, really, keep her quiet. She'd go into the kitchen and do some cooking. And she cooked this magnificent lasagna and she put it in the oven, and she came back round to the studio and we were buried in whatever it was we were doing. And then someone just opened the door. There's something burning in the kitchen. Oh, lasagna. Rushed back round, checked it out, and it was a little bit crispy. We had to kind of do a little bit of surgery to take. But it made me think about Alfred burning the cakes and how you could get stuck with that one little story, despite all the amazing things that he did with language and civilization and culture. No, he's the guy that burnt the cakes, and it's a cautionary tale. You've got to be careful that you don't do something stupid, because that might be what people know you for. So
I will be for always known as the person that burned the lasagna, not about the fact that I can sing.
There you go. Simple as that.
Yeah, so the conclusion is to remember not to burn anything, cakes, lasagna.
Never burn the cakes. Exactly.
Never burn
or
the
you
cakes.
be remembered for the wrong things.
Yeah. And speaking of the next song, so All There Is to See, on the other hand, outlines that against all odds, against the anthropomorphic views of the human is too limited to embrace and understand the world in its splendor, I believe. So in order to perceive the world, the human needs to fragment it into smaller pieces, and he needs those demarcation marks to split the world in a more comprehensive way. So do you think that conflict, sieges, and battles, both meant literally and figuratively, are the core of human's nature, that this is what drives him to evolve and simply cope with his existence?
Well, there's a part of certainly part of, I mean, a human being, from the moment you're born onwards, you're trying to understand what's going on. It's almost comes before all the other emotions. It's just that kind of curiosity, or the need, not even curiosity, but just the need. Because if you can understand what's happening, then you can give it context. So, I mean, you could take the siege idea right the way back to that. I mean, I probably didn't do that when I was thinking of the lyrics, but you could, in as much that everywhere along the way, you've got to kind of get your head around something, and until you do, then it's something that's kind of pressing in on you in some way or other, or it's something you're avoiding, or it's something you're simply not comprehending. So you do try and put everything into, I think the human is natural to put things into the neat little boxes to some extent. And what I said in that, in the song, if I remember rightly, is in some ways the person in that turret, in that castle, in that house is failing. And he's saying, well, you come here, it's a special kind of chaos. It's my kind of chaos. Because he or she has accepted the fact that they can't put everything into those neat little boxes, and that's why they're holding it all out and just dealing with their own particular set of chaotic thoughts and processes. So yeah.
And Laura,
I suspect we sort of do that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Laura
wants to say, I can see it's in her eyes.
No, sorry, I was a bit distracted because I have a thing going on here, like with my doggy. She's kind of eating the chair. Sorry, the puppy. So I was a bit distracted. I'm sorry.
And there's the perfect example of that special kind of chaos.
Yeah, that sometimes I was under siege in this moment. By the puppy. I was under siege, so I was trying to push her away, actually. So. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, what was the question for me? Sorry.
I mean, the question is whether the sieges and the battles are the core of the human's existence, whether we need them to cope with the existence and with the world around us.
Oh, that's a difficult question. Actually,
well, I just answered it. You should have been listening.
Yeah, there's a difficult question actually to answer. I don't know. The siege is part of everyday life. It's just being able to cope with it. It's just being able to actually being able to to live with it in some way, and to I think siege, when we are under siege in any way, our life is in any way, sounds a bit weird, but it makes the life a bit more interesting also. So it's part of the imperfections of life, I suppose. This is what I think siege is about in everyday life for us.
And as we discussed earlier, the sieges are not only meant in a literal way, but in a figurative way. So the constant battles a human needs to wage are also the ones are mainly, let's say, against the external enemies. So people and their destructive ideas and impactful ideas, but also those fought against ourselves. So therefore, the human in his or her complexity, with his or her fascinating brain, although a bit limited in some ways, can lose the sense of himself or herself due to the incapacitating mental problems and conditions. So according to the next song's title, When My Eyes Are Closed, a human is only capable of seeing who he really is when he's focused solely on his inner self, completely disengaged from the outside world. And does it mean that the fortified firewalls, the redoubts, walls, castles, the synthetic depictions of the reality that we raise as humans are also to protect us from ourselves, to maintain the unstained portrayal of ourselves? What do you think?
It could be. I mean, I have to say, for that song, there was a much simpler motivation behind it, because my mum, she's like 96, and she's got the early stages of dementia, and I can see quite, because she lives about 20 feet from where I am here. I can see as time goes on different parts of her just disappearing, and I get the impression that the only time that she can see herself is literally when she's asleep, or whenever, like that's what I said, when my eyes are closed. So that was my sort of starting point for something like that. It was a much more personal thing. What you're saying is actually another good way of interpreting that idea. Everything comes down to that thing, and I think that, but that is sort of the same thing in a way. You close your eyes and you can still see you, and the moment you open them, everything comes in, all the other things that affect what you are and who you are and what's going on around you. So there is that. But yeah, in this particular case, when I wrote that song, it was quite a sort of personal thing that I was literally observing, and I thought, well, there's the ultimate siege in a way.
And the horrible thing about the siege or the illness is that it doesn't only put the ill person under siege, but it actually the whole world and all the people around you, when you are ill, you're all put under siege because because of the fact that you see someone that you love disappearing with his mind, with his body, whatever. So difficult times come up for the family, for the beloved ones, because they have to take care of you, and in the meanwhile, you as an ill person, you feel bad and under siege because you don't want to be perhaps like taking care of this. It's a whole lot of, it's a world, and it's very difficult when this comes in. My dad had the same, so for 5 months he was into this bubble, let's say, and that is horrible. Everybody, all of us were under siege in that period, obviously more than us, but that's how it is. And when I sang that song, I just came from Clive's mom, and I was there trying to help her with doing some things. And when I came back, I just said, I want to sing When My Eyes Are Closed. So it was very emotional. It was a very emotional moment, and it was very felt in the song, I mean.
Thank you. And I would also like to say that the fully instrumental next song, so the To the Victor Go the Spoils, and the description of the song describes further the idea of standing behind fighting and going into battles, as it is highlighted that the reason might be both petty, so such as riches, land, and spoils, but also momentous, such as freedom. So maybe then the fight is inevitable not because of humans' appetites and his nature, but because of the objective need to fight for basic qualities that make us human, such as freedom, independence, and ability to express.
It could be. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think we're driven. Well, if you go back in time to the slightly more the more ancient cultures and everything, there would have been some very basic, whatever the word is, parameters that they're working to. And in the case of well, I mean, for example, a good example is the Vikings. I mean, the reason they started, one of the biggest motivations for getting on a boat and coming over to places like England or France or whatever was because they needed to be able to grow their own crops more successfully. And where they lived on a kind of rock with ice most of the year, they couldn't really do that very well. So that was one of the big motivations. Obviously, if you're going to go and sort of go to someone else's land, then you are going to invade. The people who are there are going to not want you going. So you've got an inevitable clash, regardless of the rights and wrongs or something. I mean, it might you could argue that perhaps someone might visit your land and wish just to set up camp there and grow crops, but you'll probably find it, particularly at the time, and I would say probably not even at the time, there's going to be resistance from the people who actually live there. So those things, yeah. And then, of course, off the back of that comes the fact that, you lose the battle and before you know it, you're a slave. What are you going to want? You're going to want to be free, aren't you? And the people who are owning you as slaves need you because you're the one working on their crops that they've just set up, having invaded your country. These are very logical, fundamental things. And that's the whole to the victor go the spoils is sort of that thing, really. It's a very basic thing that drives people sometimes. It's the gaining of land, the gaining of power, riches, spoils, and of course the other way you look at it, freedom. So yeah.
What I imagine when I listen to that song is in the very first moments you can hear lots of different cultures from the instruments and all these things. So you hear Arab vibes, you have Spanish vibes, you have all kinds of this. So I am imagining a sort of a harbor, you know, and a market close to that harbor, and with all those cultures actually coming close to each other and in contact to each other and clashing and whatever. And I imagine this kind of scenario during which, yeah, you feel under siege because you don't know actually who that particular person that you're going to meet can be. So I imagine actually this during that period, how during the medieval period, how that would have been to just walk around and don't understand anything about other languages, or simply look around and find all the people so different from you. That's the scenario I have in my mind when I go into that song, for example. It's I love this kind of thing because on to the Victor Go Despoils, it really makes your fantasy run a lot, because you just go into your own imagination of it, that song.
And in that case, do you think that perhaps the wall building, the demarcation lines, the strongholds, castles are just a natural step? Maybe people simply can't function as a union, but only as hostile tribes. Maybe it's just the way it is. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think there is a, I know we were always trying to have the United States of this or the European
Mm.
Union,
Yeah,
and to some extent that makes sense from a point of view of not going to war with each other. I think, of course,
we're
but
all
I
different.
do think that different countries have their own identities, and I don't think they're going to just throw those in the bin because they've agreed to become part of a bigger team.
Exactly.
And I don't think they should have to. And the more, that's the only thing I get a little bit nervous. I mean, that's kind of the reason why we ended up with Brexit, is that,
Yeah,
the British people, started worrying that perhaps they were getting too many rules and regulations when they
yeah,
didn't necessarily want to choose those rules and regulations. And those rules and regulations were being set by people who weren't even voted for. They weren't even in by democracy. So I think that that's kind of what. Now, I mean, I'm in very much two minds about the whole Brexit thing. From my perspective as a musician, it's a terrible situation. But I can sort of see the point. I can see the reasoning behind something like that. I think if you start putting too much unification, I suspect sometimes that will implode. And so that is definitely, I think we're all a little bit still living in our fortresses. I agree.
Yes, it's about different cultures, different. You can't put together different. We are all in Europe, but we are so different, and we have our identity. I am speaking about Italy, for example. They all say Italy could be a country that could stand on its own because it has the sun, it has the all the great products, it has really they call Italy the greenhouse of Europe. There we produce wine, we produce whatever you want, and we could stand on our own. But they set rules to Italy that are not. We care very much about food in a right way. About we have architecture, we have history, we have whatever you want. But then comes another country that perhaps they don't have that kind of culture, and what happens is that they set rules that stops the growth of a country, which I feel is not a correct thing. So that's a siege, you see, another siege.
Yeah, you thrive on the differences.
Yeah,
If
it's
you,
horrible.
it's a little bit like the whole diversity thing we've got over
Yeah,
here. There's this thing about diversity, and all the rest of it. But what they're
yeah,
doing, it's a basic mistake, because what they're doing is insisting that something is included and something is included. But that's
yes,
not diversity, because what you're then doing by virtue of that is excluding something else. Diversity
Yes,
should exist by the fact that you never even have to address it. So it should exist by the fact that nothing is excluded, but nothing is forced in either. This is the problem I've got with that whole idea. I mean, I think
yeah,
it's again, it's one of these pendulum that swung far too far the other way. You know, it should be hanging in the middle there, and hopefully one day it will. And it's the same. Cultures, we all have our differences. We're all tribes, and we can all get along just fine as long as we're not told exactly what we should be doing by another tribe. Otherwise, we'll be going back to those Viking boats and starting again.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. And we have already discussed why it is important not to burn the cakes, unless you have anything more to add to this song.
No, that's
Well,
it.
it's one of my favorites because I just enjoy the fact that it's just a nice, simple song with a very simple sentiment, and it's kind of fun to sing. So, yeah.
The last arrow continues the thread of making a stand against the world to be remembered, but on a more serious, I believe, and on a more romantic note. The title Arrow is the only desire of the lyrical ego who believes that it can give another chance to flip fate, and at the same time he expresses his hope that it can guarantee him a way out of the impossible situation to simply walk away and have another chance and have more time to spend with the beloved ones. So does it mean that, contradictory to the alleged human's expansive instincts, some people simply want to live and spend their lives, their precious moments, in peace rather than in a constant conflict?
I think most people would prefer to be living in peace. I don't know. It's not for me to say, but it would make sense to me. The beauty of that song is I was listening to a load of talking books, but they were fiction, historical fiction. And it was all about the archers. Of course, one of the things that made England able to win so many battles, 1,000 years ago, was the longbows. And there's these really big bow and arrow system, but the really big bow. And you had to have an incredible strength to be able to control those. The back muscles made you virtually deformed. And children would start at the age of, I don't know, 8 to start pulling those bows and pulling those so that they would be ready by the time they're 18 to get out to battle. And really, and these were our kind of weapon of mass destruction. I mean, they were long range. You got hit with one of those, it's going to take you out. So it was a strong image when you have these amazing battles and you've got these lines and lines of archers. And then I was just thinking, because it was, again, all these songs, they've got to come from somewhere. And in this particular case, it was a very personal thing. One of our cats died, and Tristan. And, he was one of the special ones, as I say, because I had quite a bond with this cat. And I was just thinking, I'd give a lot for just another day. Just because you do. That's why it's a normal human emotion. And then I started thinking about that and sort of the parallel with the arrow. If this archer had one more arrow, he could even turn the course of history with one more arrow. So that was the kind of imagery that I had in my head. And in fact, you notice the way that the artist David Wyatt picks up on the things that I've told him. We talked about Ridout. Well, if you actually look at the picture he did to go with the Last Arrow song, you'll see that the archer is standing there looking for that arrow, and round his feet is a black cat. That's the little tribute to Tristan. There's also a tribute to Tristan in the lyrics as well. So it's kind of, that's my personal element. Then it grows outwards from there into this idea, a bigger idea that perhaps, there's one more chance, one more opportunity to buy a few more seconds as that enemy is coming towards you and you're the last man standing, or perhaps you're the man that stands, or woman that stands between that and whatever's behind you. So yeah, peace would be
Laura,
better.
yeah.
Yeah, the same thing happened to me because exactly 2 days after my dog passed away. So Clive said, he just wrote me a message and he said, I have an idea of writing a song. I am starting to write a song about this thing. So you're going to like it. and actually he presented this song to me, and I found it really beautiful. So yes, the last moments when you're losing someone, it can be an animal, it can be a beloved one, or even a situation, and you would love to have that last arrow, that last chance to spend uh, that particular moment with this person or animal, or even moments that you would love to relive with someone that you care about. That can be another, concept of it. Sometimes you feel the time is running out and you don't want things to end, and you would just love to have one more day, one more arrow to relive that particular moment. So beautiful, beautiful song, beautiful lyrics.
I think that was partly because that was such a kind of personal one for me. I thought that's why I sang, because I could sort of, it was my message to a cat. So I thought I'd better be the one that sang it. So, yeah.
And in the last verses of the song, when the lyrical ego expresses his hope that one day the battleground where he fell will be revealed once more, the biggest fear of the human is outlined, I believe. Is the fear of being forgotten the biggest fear of mankind then? That despite all the personal struggles, randomness, and desperate clutching at straws, one can still perish, never mentioned again?
I think that would depend on the person. Some people
Yeah.
are bothered. I think they often say you never die until the last person stops talking about you. So going back to Boudica, is she still there? Because people still talk about her. There's something about some of these characters in history that just keep them relevant or keep them talked about, and they echo down
This
through
for
history.
this important people, let's say. But when we talk about the normal person around us, perhaps, or the one that goes to the office each and every day, I don't know if that applies to them. I think that their kind of living is actually to be able to go on, to live a normal life, to live a day by day a beautiful life. I don't really think it's about being. I think that in this case they do it through the offspring, probably. So they have kids, and which I would never have, but I mean, so a lot of these people, it's a bit like when we produce music, and we say my voice will survive the times, perhaps your music will survive the time. So Imaginarium, once we are not here, it will still be here. So it's for us like a kid, let's say. That's the importance also of producing music. And but we have this artistic view of it. The person that doesn't have this view, I think they really want to be here through their offspring and the desire to have their families go on.
Yeah, but they're also even those people. There'll be people who will remember them for a generation or two. That's the point. So
Yeah. Yes.
they'll
Yes.
still they'll still talk about this person, and then of course they may have children as well, and that goes about, and then they're part of that genealogy. And so there's many different ways to kind
To
of
be
achieve.
remembered and to yeah.
And some are going to do that better than others, I guess.
Yeah.
And while referring to deep, you said about sinking in. And while I was listening to this song, I believe it explores the inevitable end of all. So the melancholic and atmospheric song raises awareness of the end of the circle. So death, burial, and becoming one with the universe once more. So does a down-to-earth way of being remembered through, for example, a tombstone, still a satisfactory alternative to living in a myth or a legend like Boudica?
Well, Deep as a song was more to do with the idea that you're one human under siege, but your way of dealing with it is to kind of just sink into the earth, just down as far as you can go, to kind of
The low
get
profile.
further and further away from the things that are laying siege to you. Um, I think the question, I don't know. Again, I think that would depend on the human being. you know, maybe one person's idea would be an amazing tombstone, something, or the pharaohs wanted the, you know, pyramids and such like, and those were going to last forever. Well, actually, they sort of have done. And other people want their story to reverberate down through history. I think you all find your own way as far as that side of it's concerned. But for Deep, that is escaping. That song is all about escaping everything on your terms as you sink down into the earth until you can just be alone as you want to be. That was the idea of that song.
And Laura?
Deep is a very first of all, it was a song that when he presented it to me, it was written in Holland during the days of the gigs that we had, and I was just listening to it while we were rehearsing, and I said, "What are you playing?" He was playing something. "What is this music that you're playing?" And he said, "Well, I'm trying to figure out if this could be a beautiful song to, for the album Siege." And I said, "Wow, definitely, it's beautiful." So that song that could have been part of the Siege for me for the first time when he presented it to me, because actually I'm known as a power singer. So he wanted me to stay very quiet, to stay very low, and this is what I did, and I enjoyed it very much.
I gave you one rule, didn't I?
Yes, don't do one, and I say one power note. Don't dare. And I was so into this rule that when I had to record, the song that I recorded after was Footprints, and Clive said, "Actually, you can now do it. You can give power," he said, because in the beginning, I really was so quiet, because I was completely into this song. And I took out the voice again, by the way. So yes, that song is like an invitation to, when you have enough of the world, when you have enough of everything that is around you, just go quiet and just sink into something, into yourself. It could be even a reading, listening to some music. So just disappear and stay with yourself. This is the meaning of that beautiful song.
Okay. And the album both starts and ends with a purely battleistic song. In the rhythm of the war drums, horns, and unleashed chaos, humankind's destiny is forged. Sieges happen all the time throughout life in different shapes and different sizes, as we have just discussed. They are the magnum opus of our existence, but also our course, our doom, our leading us to some sort of inevitable end. And therefore, I have the last question about the message of the album that it conveys in this part of our intriguing conversation. So, does the circle of sieges, fighting, bloodlust never really end? Does it only close just to begin again? And is it possible to escape the never-ending sieges?
Well, that again is very much down to probably the individual or the sort of psychology of it. I think probably on a more literal note, you could escape a siege, but on a more metaphysical note, you're always under siege. Perhaps what you can do is shift your ground, get away from one problem, and probably find another one. That's what makes life interesting. And those
As I said before, yeah.
That's the adventure. That's the path that you take, the map that you draw in your life, where you shift around, finding the paths of least resistance, or perhaps even the paths of most resistance, to kind of achieve what it is you want to achieve. I mean, I'm not entirely sure we're ever completely free on that sort of level of the idea of being under siege. Perhaps after we die, maybe we're free of it then. I almost wonder if that's the case. If there's life after death, we're probably dealing with another set of sieges. Why not?
Not for everybody, because when you have someone important, like, or someone like a journalist, someone like a presenter, someone that has been someone known, in some cases they still talk bad about this person, so they are still under siege. The siege can go on forever, I think. And but as we said, siege is something that is part of our life, and we cannot we can't avoid it. It's just how we are clever, how clever we are to go through the sieges that comes up to through the days, you know. That's also, and how strong we are to make them bigger or smaller. Because if we make out of a small problem, we make it a big problem, then it becomes a big siege. And that's all about that, I think, because you can't live without, you can't.
But also, if you take it as a journey, if you take the whole album as a journey, even though it's not a concept album, we're looking at it from different purposes, but if you take it as a journey, what I like about Blood Moon is when Laura says, "Unleash the storm," we all go into battle and we don't know what the result is going to be. So if we're making our bid for freedom, we're shaking off that siege, we're escaping, or are we? We'll never know, because we don't tell you in the album. That's why there's no lyrics at the end of the song. We go in and we go into the unknown, as we all do. So that's kind of a message in itself.
And if you see, it's a circle, because if you think about it, Krzysztof, in the beginning we have Boudica, and in the end we have Blood Moon. The two songs kind of connect, because we start with the battle and we end up with the battle, you know. We start with Boudica, and it's kind of Boudica like the last one. So everything, it's a circle, how you live your life. It's a circle, you know. Things are happening. I have a passion for spheres. I have this thing, you know. I think that round shapes, circles, or more full 3D spheres are actually very appealing to me. I don't know why. So this whole thing about the siege.
Your English covered the word spheres, because otherwise it would be balls, and I'm just thinking, I don't know where that's going.
No, not a bowl. A bowl, no, not like
ball.
Oh,
like football.
Bubble.
No, ball. Oh, never mind.
Okay, I didn't get what you. By the way, a sphere, crystal ball. You mean? Yeah, crystal ball.
Yes.
So that's.
My English is a bit, you know.
Yeah. So that's appealing, very much appealing to me, and that you can see everything from the inside of this space you have. And perhaps the people, they don't see you actually, because I imagine it as a dark glass or crystal, whatever. Glass. I prefer glass to crystal. This is my element. I love it. Perhaps because I was grown up in Sweden, so that's all a piece of that. And I can see everything, but there's a dark glass that nobody can see me. I can observe and decide when I do something, when I appear, and when I have to disappear. This is incredibly cool, I think. So that's all about this. Siege, a concept. Yes, a concept in the title, but conceptual in the songs. So this is how it is about.
Yeah, and speaking of spheres, I would also like to raise the subject of the cover album, as the fantastic album was prepared by David Viat, so who also is responsible for example, the Songs of the Wildlands or Theory of Molecular Inheritance. And the cover art shows a troop of Roman soldiers storming a golden, richly decorated sphere, while being surrounded by a green floating mist. And in the sphere there is someone, a mysterious shadow, maybe a guardian of this mechanism. So could you tell me more about the machinery, what it is, what the Roman soldiers are storming actually?
Well, again, we're looking at the very basic idea that we're all under siege in some way, and the Romans represent, could be anything, could be sickness, it could be social media, it could be paranoia. We had to embody it in some way. So and it's very, you know, when you say the word siege to most people, they will immediately think of the siege of Troy or something like that, where you've got the massive army outside, or Lord of the Rings with the big fortress and all the monsters on one side and all the humans on the other, or whatever. And so, you know, in that sphere is you or me. And all we're doing in our own particular way is just keeping everything out, keeping it all under control. And in that particular
just what I was describing in my crystal ball. That's it.
So I mean, basically,
exactly that I meant.
That's the idea. It makes no difference what period of time it is. It's just that idea.
And then you see the fire inside. So it can be a fireplace. It could be this fireplace that you that creates this this, how to say, this coziness and of your home, of your space, not necessarily your home, your space that you have chosen to be your safe space. It can be a dream. A dream can be your safe space, because during the day you see all the stuff, and during the night you have the darkness. But that darkness makes you see a lot of things, because you don't have distractions around. So that's your safe place, for example. And yes, siege is a very, very intriguing topic. I think is a very intriguing concept. So that's that you can use even. It makes you think a lot.
And on the sphere, there are almost some kind of runic symbols on the sphere itself, and one day some bright person will work out what they mean.
Okay. So they do mean something, I mean, in a literal way.
Maybe.
Okay. And as a part of a promotion process...
Some secrets are better kept secret, you see. That's what makes something...
Mystery, Krzysztof, mystery.
Right, okay, yeah.
It's like Boudica, you see?
Yeah, I was going to say that, yeah. And also as a part of the promotion process, as you already mentioned, a video for one of the songs was recorded, more precisely for the final readout. And in this video, which was recorded in the mead hall, you were wearing Viking outfits, and even people from the Black Crow Viking reenactment group was involved, which is based in Hereford. So could you tell me more about making this video? How did it go? Was it fun to you?
So much.
Yeah, it was. I mean, basically, obviously, as you know, I built a Viking mead hall in the Victorian walled garden that exists, again, about 50 feet from where I'm sitting. And I wanted to build something that was interesting, that might enable us to do little gigs, concerts and things. And we've done a couple of events there now as well. But when Laura booked herself to come and do the recording, and we kind of knew where we were going with it all, we had we're starting to see the album take shape. It was put forward that we could perhaps make a video. So progrock.com Essentials stumped up a little bit of money, which is very kind of them, and enabled us to do that. And we got Neil Monaghan, who's the guy who's directing the Alchemy movie. He came and he made the promo video, and in fact he put the documentary together as well. And I said, well, it's easy. We want to do, if we do the final readout, basically, why don't we just use the mead hall? It was all built, it was all finished, we might as well. So we did. So effectively we had our film set ready made. So it made perfect sense. And then obviously having now got a relationship with the Black Crows, after all, how many Viking reenactment groups get to find out they've got a mead hall 3 miles away from where they live? So they, some of them came over as well. And so we had some extras, and it was all done in a day. Laura and I got dressed into our Viking togs at the beginning of the day, and we just went in there. And it was a long day, but it was not a hard day, was it? It was just work hard, but it was a good day. It was
because we finished, actually, we were very good and brave, and we finished before time. So now we needed the night scenes. So we said, okay, now what are we going to do now? And we said, and we just sit here and we wait for the night to come, because we needed this fire pit thing, you know, this scene. It was something very nice. I was waiting for that, but so horribly hot because to make the scene more real, I wanted to go as close as I could. So I literally had my eyes burning so much. The skin on my face was like, burning so much. I was like this from the a few centimeters really from the fire. And but the scene was actually good because it seems really like I came out from it, and that was fun. So we had to wait like a couple of hours or so, wasn't it, Clive? 2-3 hours before we could actually shoot the video in the evening.
Well,
So,
we kept ourselves busy inside the meat hall until then, and then once it was dark enough, we took the thing outside. The fire
yeah,
had been burning for a while, so it was kind of nice. And
we even had
I
battle
own
lessons.
I own a snow machine, so we got that going as well to add that extra kind of chaotic element to the scene.
Yeah.
And both of us were given a few basic fight rules in terms of you know the rules that the reenactment guys are given when they do all this stuff, so that we preferably didn't kill ourselves. And then off we went, and we continued to film in the darkness, and that was the really good stuff as far as I was concerned.
Yes, it was fun,
Yeah.
really. I enjoyed everything. I enjoyed each and every moment. And then the day after, we had this making of. So we separately filmed with Neil in the meat hall. So first was Clive, and then I was doing my stuff, and then I came in and he went out. And in the end, he comes in. So we both join together. And it's a very funny ending of it, and that was enjoyable too. I really like to do that too. 2 days, 1.5 of really interesting stuff, I have to say. And it was the first time I actually was on a film set, and I loved it so much. It was so funny, really. I can't wait to make another one. Yeah.
Thank you. And also the Siege comes with an album, a bonus album, on which one can find 9 more songs, among which there are alternative acoustic and instrumental versions of the song from the main album, but also 2 revisitations of the songs from the album called Ring of Roses from 1992 by Shadowland. And the song I am specifically referring to is Dorian Gray. And what inspired you to include that particular song in the Siege as a whole? Do you think that Dorian Gray was also under siege in a way, with his curse and a blessing of immortality?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it appears more for the fact that the age is a siege, and by the way, this was the only old song that we decided to keep for the as Clive used to say, for the performance and for the topic, yes, of the siege. It perfectly fitted in. So that's.
Yeah, I mean, gradually all the other songs got tipped off the edge, going back to the beginning of all of this. But the one kept hold of was Dorian Gray, but it didn't feel right to put it on the main album. But once we decided, yeah, we are going to make a bonus album, that was the perfect place to put it. And yes, absolutely, the guy was under siege from various angles, age being the main one. Yeah.
So are you planning to include more songs from the past in the upcoming albums from
We don't
Shadowland or
know.
other?
Who knows? We
No,
don't know yet.
I mean, we haven't brought this one out yet. So,
Yeah. So I have, yeah.
No, I just think it'd be nice to get this one out and take a moment and think, yeah, great, there we go, we've got it finally, there it is, before starting to worry about what might come next.
Right. And I have the last, final, ultimate question. When is the next work of yours coming? Have you, by any chance, already decided what the theme the next album is going to have? And whether the new exciting musical landscape is going to encompass ancient and modern cultures too?
Well, I think the ancient culture thing is something that fascinates both of us. And I think it also helps to define what we are as Imaginarium, if you think about ancient perhaps is the wrong word, but you know what I'm saying, history. So I would say that any further Imaginarium albums and songs would be going down that line. We do have a few ideas knocking around, and we'll leave those in the kind of back of the mind for a while, let it sort of mature. Various other things have got to happen first, but yeah, there are some ideas, so we'll see where it goes.
And Laura?
Same as Clive says, we obviously have to see what's going to happen now with we are excited about the Siege now coming out, but in the meanwhile, well, for me, I'm always full of ideas. So of course, we are always projecting some stuff for the future already. But I think that it's a bit like making a festival, I suppose. You make a festival and then you already think about what the next edition is going to be. It's the same thing. You have lots of passionate emotions inside of you. So you are already thinking about the future while living in the present, of course, and in the glory of the past. So this is a bit like that, the same thing. You start a new path in your mind, and as more the time passes, it develops more and more. I don't agree so much with all those artists that they come out with a release and after 2-3 months they are already out with another release. But that's a fast food, which is not what we want. We give it the time to make sure to really be sure to be the right idea, and that's how I think a perfect project comes out. I mean, this was very natural. It came out very naturally, very, can we say, easily, Clive. So I think, and I reckon the next one would be the same. The ideas are there.
So the next album still remains a mystery.
Of course.
So I would like to thank you once again, both of you, from the bottom of my heart for this conversation. And thank you very much for giving me all the insights from the wonderful work of yours and for the joint analysis of the album. The Siege by Imaginarium is being released on the 4th of April 2025, and not a single fan of epic, unique and captivating musical journeys should ever miss out on this wonderful album. Once again, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Krzysztof, thank you so much. You have been a wonderful host. Thank you.
Thank you.